And we are live with Walter Blanks Jr., an amazing young man, doing great things, all the way up to meeting with the President of the United States, the leader of the free world. I saw a picture of it. I couldn't believe my eyes. It just popped into my news feed. I had met you already, Walter, but it popped into my Twitter feed at some point, and I thought it must be like a deep fake. I thought it had to be like photoshopped or something. Everybody, this is Walter Blanks Jr. He is a communications associate with the American Federation of Teachers, which is a national advocacy organization and defense organization for school choice. And what's right in their title, it's actually for children. Walter was also the first recipient of the AFC's, which is the American Federation of Children's scholarship program. So he's the prototype for some of their efforts around these things. Walter, thank you for joining me this morning. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's just start at the beginning. I mean, so what happens when I look up and I see a young Black man who I've met before in other venues, who tells a personal story about how school choice has directly impacted your own life. But I see you sitting with the President of the United States. How does Walter Blanks Jr. get to be sitting at the table with the President?
Yeah, well, first off, it was certainly the hand of the Lord handling that entire situation. But the thing that was really interesting about that was I didn't tell anyone really that this was going on, because I didn't want that getting thrown out there. You don't just put that on Facebook or social media and say, hey, I'm going to the White House, going to, be with the president, all that stuff. I was very close guarded. My parents knew, obviously the people here at AFC knew, but I was more concerned with, okay, what's the strategy? What's the message going in? Because I'm playing, two fronts, right? I'm the advocate and supporting school choice, which President Trump supports, but then I'm also a messenger to the Black community and to my people and an example. And so those things are very, very important to me. And sometimes I have to learn how to dance in both worlds, so to speak. But I can't even really describe how it happened. It was just one day we got a call from the White House team, and they said this is what they're doing. And they wanted, me to come, as well as Denisha and a few other students. And I had declined a few opportunities before that because I didn't like kind of the optics of it or my role or what was expected of me during those particular events. But this one was different because not only did I have a seat at the table, right? I had an opportunity to engage, to say my piece, which was the most important thing to me, because no one can look at that entire hour and a half we were there and make up a narrative, right? It's very cut and dry. It's very, very obvious. I was very clear on my message and the reason I was there. And ultimately, I also hope that can inspire other people. You don't have to agree with everyone on the political spectrum to kind of get things done. But it was certainly a very, very interesting event that I was really glad to experience.
In one way you can look at it as Walter Blanks Jr., a person who is enjoying a great deal of personal achievement and success, sitting with the president, regardless of who the president is always going to be something that you remember, that you tell your children about. However, we are in a political environment. We're in a political world. This president isn't just the president. He's not a generic president. He's he's very an iconoclastic, I guess is the most generous way that I'll be able to put it. President, much different than others, much different than what I would elect. So, on one hand, you can have people that applaud your achievement, like me and others in the community, just as a personal achievement. But you said the optics. What were you worried about in terms of the optics of you forever having a picture of you sitting with this particular president?
I mean, it's the concern that every person of color has. Well, most people of color, I will say, that I was just there, right? As a puppet or as a prop to further push an agenda. But even more so than that, my biggest concern was having my community, call me a sellout, or you
Hmm.
know, I can think of 100 different words that they would throw at me when I'm just trying to fight for more students and more families to have the opportunities that I did. Period, point blank, that's it. And there were some times, and even when this happened, I had people who were in my, you know, personal messages and on my social media saying all kinds of stuff. You know, you're a joke, or you know, one guy asked me how much did it cost for me to sell my soul to sit next to him, and all these things.
Hmm.
And and I mean, it hurts a little bit, but you know, those are the opinions of people who I didn't know before that, and I don't even know now. So in the grand scheme of things, their opinions don't really matter. But you know, this is a hard fight. This is not a
Hmm.
sexy profession to be in. It's not, you know, all glitz and glamour. It's dirty, it's grimy, but it's what is needed for children across the country. And so if I have to be the one to take all of the criticism for that, then I'll gladly do it if I am able to help put more children in a better position like I was. And so I think at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
Mm. So, you say that, like, it just comes with the territory, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
But it's got to sting, to be in such a complicated situation, to have your own story of why you're doing this work, but then to have people doubt and question, how authentically you arrive at your positions. How are you handling that? Because I'm sure you haven't always had to deal with that.
Yeah. The most important thing for me is tunnel vision, and being able to stay on task and on message. The team here at AFC understands my personality, my gifts, my strengths, my weaknesses, and so they certainly are able to help kind of keep me on track. Sometimes my boss Tommy Schultz has to say, you know, like let's refocus, let's keep on message, keep on target. There's a lot of times where I just have to get off of social media. I think social media resets are much needed in the political realm, very much so. But ultimately, you know, asking how are the children, I think is a big reset for me. And so if I can be a part of an event, take place in something, have my name attached to something, and it helps put children in a better position, then I'm all for it. And so there are some times where I'm doing things and I'm nervous, or there was one time earlier this year where I testified at a hearing in Nebraska, in favor for them bringing school choice to Nebraska, and it was a hearing, and I testified and I was super nervous. But then in the back of my mind, I'm just like, you know, you've been here before, Walt, you know, chill out. But then on the other side, it's like, well, what do you do if you don't? Right? What would happen if you continue to sit back because you're nervous? You know, nothing will get done, at least from what you're able to impact and what you're able to change. And so I try to keep little Walter, you know, in my mind as I'm fighting this battle, and keeping that at the forefront, because I think when the focus and the perspective is changed to that, then it doesn't matter. There's nothing I won't do to help push this further along.
That's driven a lot by your personal story, I believe. And in my own life, the reason that you'll find me as being such a strong supporter of school choice is just it's very practical. Like I had to tap into to school choice, like really for my own family. And when something's personal to you like that, it kind of helps you tune out all the noise of what everybody says about your motives for doing it and all of that. But so for people listening or watching right now who don't know your story, don't know why it is that you would support um, parent choice, school choice, whatever we want to call it, what is that story? Why is it that in your personal life it's important?
Yeah. So to go back and very briefly, um, I grew up in a rough area of Columbus, Ohio, and where I saw, relatives, people that I knew, either get shot or going to jail, and all of the things, the stigmas that we hear about the Black community in a negative way. I grew up around all of that, and so
Mhm.
I was placed in multiple schools. It seemed like every year I was going to different schools, whether they were, urban academies or the public school. All these different names, all these different schools. But everywhere I went, there seemed to be the same issue. Walter is a distraction. Walter is hyper. Walter is not learning. Walter is not, putting himself and applying himself to his studies, and all of these things. And I struggled with that a lot. I struggled with, self identity, who I was. I was constantly told by teachers I would never amount to anything. I would be just like my dad, or I'd end up, just like the other bad kids. That's what I was labeled as, a bad kid. And so my mom was saying, well, there's plenty of bad kids in the school, but your job as an educator, your job as a teacher, as administrator, is to be able to get through those barriers, right? Like, I'm sending him to you 8, 9 hours a day, and he comes home and he still can't read. He still can't do math. So what's the problem here? And so I was bullied a lot. I always talk about the cool Spider-Man shirt that I had that kids came up and ripped it off of me. And it just wasn't a very good environment to be in, right? I'm just focused on not getting beat up. There's no way I'm going to be able to sit and focus on my multiplication or my reading level. And so it got to a point where my parents were just like, you know what, enough is enough. We need to figure out another way to help Walter. Otherwise, he is going to end up like all of the people that he hung out with. My mom hated that I considered those kids my friends. Every day I say, oh yeah, I was out with my friends and doing this. She's like, they're not your friends. They're not your friends. And she would always say that, and I'm just like, fine, mom, I know, whatever. But now I really understand they were not my friends, and so that was a little
I
difficult.
just want
But
to tell you, Walter, that's generational. My grandmother used to tell me, "Show me your friends, and I'll tell you who you are."
yeah,
I used to
yeah,
hate that because I liked my friends. I
right,
liked my
yeah,
friends, and I used to be able to. Would usually think to myself, "Yeah, I got some dumb friends, but I'm not dumb." Did you can be
right.
friends with dumb
Yep,
people,
I'm
but
the exception, right?
I'm
I'm
the
not the
exception.
one
Yeah.
that's causing all the trouble, right?
Mhm.
But my mom found out about, my parents found out about the Ed Choice Scholarship, which is a voucher in Ohio. And the thing that's super interesting about the circumstances was that the school that we chose, my brother got in.
Mm.
The private school we chose, my brother got in. He's gifted and talented, the perfect child, right? The perfect child, couldn't do anything wrong. And so he was coming from homeschooled. We homeschooled for a couple years. He was coming from being homeschooled. I was coming from a public school, multiple grades behind. And when he passed the entrance test to get in, I did not. And so I was supposed to go into the seventh grade, and he was going into high school, I believe. And the administration at the school said, well, we don't want to accept the older brother and not accept Walter. So what they did was they said, we are going to hold him back a grade, and we're going to open up another section, because at the time the sixth grade class was full. And so they said, we'll hold him back, and we'll open up another section just so he can go here, but he's going to have to catch up. By the end of the sixth grade year, he needs to be, at seventh grade or even further. And so my parents did it. I was all concerned with, well, what is everyone going to think of me because I was held back? And to this day, not really, I don't think anyone from the school knows. My friends know that I was held back, probably till they see this video. So thanks a lot for that. But but
It's
the
known
thing
now.
that right, the thing that I will never forget, and if you've seen the Miss Virginia movie, I know you have, people watching have
Mhm.
seen the Miss Virginia movie, where her son goes to the private school for the first time, and the science class, and they're learning about the Venus flytrap, and you see him like brighten up. Like, that was his like moment where he's like, wow, well, maybe this education thing isn't so bad after all. And that was my first year at the private school. Like, I was learning things that I had never learned. And mind you, I was held back. So these were things that I should have already known. And the entire sixth grade year was just a huge, huge learning curve for me. I spent more time in the classroom than I did going out to recess and, doing all these things, because the teachers wanted to make sure that I was caught up. And so I was learning about, astronauts and the Apollo launch, and, all of these things. And I remember going home to my parents and excited, right? Telling them all the things that I learned. And there was sometimes where, like, I'd get mad. I'm just like, well, how come you guys never taught me any of this stuff that I'm learning now? All of these things. And so that was the first time where my educational journey, I think I really owned it. and it became my own, right? I wasn't being forced to go to school. I got to go to school. I had the opportunity to go to school. And as I began to continue to grow and become a man and to continue learning, I realized that it's a huge, huge gap in the Black community between the haves and the have-nots.
Mhm.
And when we talk about, reparations and all these things, like, the most important thing in our community is education. We don't have a lot of other things, if any, to really fall back on if that does not go through. And so I think that is the most important thing. And I had a conversation with my mom in Ohio this past weekend. I went to Ohio to kind of reset, but I said, well, I started thinking about, all this race stuff and what's going on in the country. And I said, well, Black boys and Black girls should not have to be essentially uprooted from their communities to go to these predominantly white, you know, private schools to just to, get out and be able to get a good education. She said, yeah, you're to an extent you're right, but we sent you so that you could come back to your community and
Mhm.
bring it back to us because and then my dad was saying, he said, not everybody is going to be able to go. That's just the reality of it. And so you send a few to bring it back to your community and then you expand it, right? And you grow it. And so I had a different life plan, right? I wanted to go into the sports world and be an announcer, Stephen A, Max Kellerman, Shannon Sharp, something like that. And once I realized that not only did I have a unique perspective in this space by living it, I also had the gifts and the abilities for it. And so it was very, very difficult for me to say, you know what, I got mine. Good luck to the rest of y'all. And I found my place here in this movement. And so as soon as I graduated college, 3 weeks later, I found myself in an apartment in DC, continuing this work with AFC, where I get to meet with students, teachers, faculty, staff across the country, and really, really have that discussion of what does educating, our children look like, more specifically our Black children,
Mhm.
to really achieve something more and break the stigma.
So, I want to ask a kind of a tough question. So I see you sitting with the Black Lives Matter T-shirt. You talk openly about your people, my people, Black folks. You have parents that are obviously Black folks and care about Black world. You came from a part of Ohio that's Black, so just keep going. Black, 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 Black here.
Hmm.
But I had Darrell Bradford on the show too, who also has a similar story. Got out of the same neighborhood that Freddie Gray lived in, got a scholarship, went to a very white private school, and came out with a great education. Came out with great network, great people that he knew, and it was everything that people say about integration and about scholarships. Getting into better schools is that it does increase your life chances of meeting people that will help you do well in life, period. Right.
Right. Yeah.
But I think him and I have had some semi-candid conversations, semi on my side, candid on his, around the ethnic tax, the equity tax, the Black tax, that puts on you when you are sent out of a Black environment into a white environment for your education, your social training, your friendships. And I feel like a lot of Black parents are making a trade-off. You'll either get really great academics in a school where you'll be missing something culturally, or you'll get something cultural but missing the academics, which is kind of a savage trade-off to have to make. It's like a Sophie's choice, which one's more important. And
Hmm.
is that real in your life at all? Do you see anything that resonates about that with you?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, all of it. I in this past few months, that's what I have really been reflecting on, and what that whole idea. So my private school that I went to was majority white, and most of, if not all, the Black kids who went were there because of the voucher. Would not
Mhm.
have been able to go there otherwise.
Was
And
that known?
then
Was that known to everybody there?
no,
No.
no, it
Okay.
wasn't. It
Hmm.
wasn't.
Hmm.
And in that school, there were two that I can think of, and I might be wrong, but two that I can think of, Black and staff members. One was a janitor, and the other one was the athletic director. And so the janitor ended up passing away when I was in high school, and
Mm-hmm.
the athletic director ended up switching to the development team. So that's what he does now. He's been a mentor of mine since then. And same thing when I went to college, no black teachers, black administrators. The only black adult on staff was the diversity leadership person. That was it. And so it that has been very, very tough for me, and I'm really starting to see those nuances, because when I look at, right, my circle of friends, I have one super close black friend, and then 5 or 6 white friends.
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and it and I've always wondered, why is that the case? It's not that, I favor white people more than black people or anything like that, but that was the environment that I was in. And it's like you said, it's kind of like a trade-off, right? Sometimes, and part of the candid conversation, sometimes I wonder, I'm just like, did I lose a piece of my blackness within, this span of time? Um, and so I wonder that, because growing up, yes, my family was black, and yes, my parents taught me, how you conduct yourself with police officers, how you conduct yourself out in public, the optics that you may be giving, you have to be aware of those things. But there were, I feel like, a lot of things that weren't discussed, whether it was in the home, in the school, black history.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have, taken it upon myself to educate myself and do my own research and learn a lot. Like, I didn't know what Black Wall Street was until I was in college. And then when I learned about it, I was almost disgusted in myself, right? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
how did I not know? Like, there's no excuse. And I can say, oh well, my parents didn't teach me, or the schools didn't teach me. Like yeah, that's true, but there's still some personal responsibility that comes with that.
Well,
And
I'll just say, to be easy on yourself, because I'd probably say 9.5% of the, or 9.5 of people probably don't know about Black Wall Street, which is sad. But I get your point, is that, you get the mainstream education that you need, and at some point you also have to supplement culturally. And
Mhm.
I think part of that you would have to do anyways, no matter
Right.
what school you went to. I also think that there's something really interesting about the trade-off between, being with your black culture, not getting the academics, versus having to go to a white school, because in between those two things are black schools that have the black culture that aren't part of the undercurrent of black culture.
Right.
Like we misname what black culture is sometimes. So going to an
Mhm.
all black school doesn't necessarily mean you're going to a school that has a strong black culture
Right.
to
Right.
it. Those can be very different things. Um, so I wonder about, you say I have one black friend and really close black friend and 6 white friends, but it obviously hasn't hurt you in the way that you're able to make a material difference in the world and in life. You've advanced. Like I said, you're sitting next to the president at some point at your age. I mean, come on,
Right. Right.
so it
Right.
takes you really far. When you advocate now for school choice on the policy positions, though, it's a very white environment.
Mhm.
Um, and it makes it very hard to make the pitch to communities of color that are very distrustful or
Right.
suspicious
Mhm.
of some of the people that would be supporting you, to make this pitch to them. What is it that you say to actually break through to the suspicious folks within our own communities about this just being about the policy, not being about the politics?
Yeah, well, I think for parents who and communities where they are really hurting for, better schools and better opportunities for their children, those are the strings that I pull on. Not to be manipulative, but
Mm-hmm.
I understand, regardless of who I sit next to, who I spend time with, like, I understand where you're coming from, right? Like, I was that kid. I was your son, I was your daughter. And I think being open, being honest, being genuine is the best way to kind of break those walls down. And so I've had people that relatives or whatever, who saw that clip with me with the president, and they were like really, really upset. But then when I explained to them why I was there, the work that I was doing, and the impact that it can have on our communities, then they were like, oh, like, okay, like I see what's going on. So just candid conversations, educating them on, like you said, the policy and not the politics of it. I mean, there's still some people who they just don't care. Like, right, to
Mhm.
them, I've sold my soul. I'm a lost cause. There's nothing to change your mind, and that's fine. But I think when you're able to articulate the point that your child's life depends on this,
Mhm. Mhm.
and my life depended on it, I think they understand that and they see that as a parent, and so I think that transcends anything else. And so um, that has been the key focus when I go in and talk to these families and these students. And so while I say sometimes I feel like I've lost my black side, and I think it's very important to keep being in those white environments has also allowed me to kind of to have that double speak that you and Darrell talked about in his
Mhm.
conversation. But it has also afforded me a foot in the door or seat at the table for those moments. There are a lot of very smart, very influential black people, but they don't have necessarily that opportunity, right? That connection. And so it has been beneficial because then when I'm sitting in a room with politicians and we're discussing um, the nuances of ed choice or education policy or what that looks like, they may not necessarily be concerned with the life of a black child, right, or the life of a black family. So I don't typically go that way, but then I'm able to kind of switch the lingo a little bit, right, and explain to them, the financial benefits of school choice within a community, or those kind of things, and be able to kind of dip back and forth into both worlds when needed. And so it has been beneficial to be able to have those experiences and have those opportunities.
Mhm. I think it's very important, like if you were to move to France, for you to eventually learn how to speak French. So in the United States, power happens in rooms where there are white people,
Hmm.
and the inability to be able to travel those rooms and navigate those rooms is not good for anybody. Like it wouldn't, it's not a good strategy to not have people prepared to be able to walk within
Right.
that world. So you obviously have mastered that already. What are you going to do with it though? I mean, it's one thing to get access, to be in the room,
Hmm.
to be at the table. So I look at, like, I'm going to speak just specific to Trump for a second. So here you are sitting at the table with Trump, right? Um, and when I think about that, Kim Kardashian went up to meet with Trump about criminal justice, and she collected a lot of heat about meeting with Trump, but she really didn't care because her one goal was to get a woman out of jail. And
Hmm.
she got a woman out of jail that had been sitting in jail for too long and had been having a real unjust life because she was in jail. And that to me is specific and actionable. So if you're that woman that she got out of jail, you don't mind that Kim Kardashian went and met with Trump to make it
Right.
happen. You don't care who did it, right?
Right. Right.
And in some ways, I feel like our kids are being held being held for ransom by the American public education system. And I don't care what pharaoh you have to go talk to let your
Hmm.
people go, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't think that Moses became Pharaoh. I don't think that he loved Pharaoh at any point. I'm not saying you're Moses either, brother. I know you went to a Christian school, but I'm not telling you that you're Moses. I'm just using
Right.
the analogy of things
Right.
that
Right.
we can agree on. It's like you talk to who you have to talk to set
Hmm.
people free.
Hmm.
Um, but are you making sure, and you're worried and not worried about that you're not going to be like converted over? Like the longer
Hmm.
you stay in some rooms, the more you start becoming the
Right.
rooms. And I worry about that in our police forces and our teaching
Hmm.
forces. The more our
Hmm.
people join these organizations, the more they
Hmm.
become them. Are you worried
Hmm.
about that at all?
Not at the moment. And I say that at the moment because obviously I don't know where I'm going to end up, but that's why I have people like you, Darrell, Emory Edwards, to name a few, to keep me on track, because I know full well if you get on social media and you see me out here, you know, kicking it with Trump, let's just say, the way Kanye did, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would be all over me about that. And so I have people like you in my life to keep me on track, especially when it comes to staying true to who I am and staying true to my mission. And so of course, I would like to think, right, like that wouldn't happen, but we all would like to think that. But I think my mission, my goal, like you asked me, what do I plan to do with that? This goes beyond just school choice, right? Way beyond that, and obviously that's my main objective right now. But I plan to, run for office, right? What does that look like? Even now, I have this sheet here of all of these legislation ideas that I've been working on off the clock to address some of the needs of our people today, like right now. And so being able to keep that focus is the most important thing to me. But I also have mentors, right? That's the most important thing to me. Mentors to keep me
Mhm.
to keep my tunnel vision, keep me going down the right road. And so um, I'm not worried about it now because I am still fresh, fresh to the game, green to the game. And right now, I'm less concerned with making moves and more concerned with just learning, right?
Mhm.
Absorbing, whether it's from Trump, right? I always say when people ask me about Trump, all these things, I always say there's a lesson to be learned everywhere, right? Whether it's a good or bad lesson. Maybe sitting next to Trump taught me how not to be presidential, right?
Mhm.
All of these things. And so I'm constantly looking for, okay, what can I learn in this situation to propel me forward? There's a lot of times like I keep myself up at night with current events and things like that. And I'm like, if I were the president or if I was the governor of Minnesota or Ohio or Pennsylvania, like what would I do in this situation? How would I
Mhm.
answer? How would I respond? And so, all of these scenarios, I think are building me and preparing me for that moment. But ultimately, like I'm depending on y'all to keep me in line because I honestly don't trust myself enough at this point because there is so many things that I don't understand and so many nuances and so many things. I'm a rookie in this game. I've been sharing my story most of my life, but I'm on a whole nother, playing field right now. I was playing checkers then and now I'm playing chess. And so um
But
I
you're doing
have
it well.
people.
I
I'm
mean,
I'm
you're doing it
trying.
well.
I'm trying. Thank
You're
you.
doing it well, and you're ahead of the game, and you're smarter and sharper than people twice your age on this stuff. So God has actually set you up well with the armor that you need to do this battle. And you should feel blessed in that way because God gives you what you need to be able to fight the fights that you need to fight on His behalf. So I'm glad that you have it and you're there and you have arrived to it and you have some humility. But I hope it doesn't turn into self-doubt about your mission and about what you're trying to do. But you say, if I was president, you think about it at night, like sitting up at night, thinking through kind of like, if I was president, what would I do in these situations? What would you do with education? Knowing what you know, what would be your education legacy if you became president? Because like I might have to vote for you in the future. Who knows? I might be voting for you at some point. So I want to know right now. I'm looking at the presidential election and I'm not finding enough of what I need for education. So what would be your education
Yeah.
pitch?
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing would be obviously, equal access across the board for families, whether that is, ESAs or, all these things. But I think even more important than that is learning how to work together on both sides, even if there is compromise. Because right now we see one side is all for it, the other side is not.
Hmm.
And so
Wait a second. Let me just
understanding
challenge you on that just for a second. One side is mostly for it,
that's
not
that's
all
fair.
for
That's
it.
fair. You're right.
One
That's
side is
fair.
mostly for
Yeah.
it, and the
Yeah.
other side is for it for their own children, but not for mine.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, that's the difference
Okay,
because
that's
both
that's a
sides are
good
for it.
correction. Right,
Yeah, both
yeah,
sides are for it, but one group is mostly for it, and for me to have it, the other group is for it,
right,
but only for their own kids. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So understanding that, but it's also tactics, right? And one thing that I've learned being in those rooms is that a lot of things don't get done simply because it's the right thing to do. There's always some kind of extra, what extra incentive, what can I get out of this? And so understanding, I would have to be very, very convincing, passionate, driven, and articulate about the fact that our community is hurt by this, getting killed by it, going to jail because of it. And so I think understanding that, because if you're, in my opinion, If you are a wealthy, white person who can, pay tuition by mortgage, it's hard to understand, there are some communities even on the other side of town they don't have that option, and their schools aren't the best. And so I think, um, understanding that, forcing these people who oppose school choice to go to these schools that are run down, that aren't teaching kids. But I think that would be the go-to, because appeal to better nature, maybe, if some people
Hmm.
have it, but we have to understand that, this is a people issue, right? And we need equal access. And so right now, I don't necessarily know what that looks like tangibly, other than school choice. But I personally do not believe that school choice is the end, right? I think it's a means to the end. And so
Hmm.
I've had to switch my focus a little bit, because I'm gonna think, okay, give school choice to everybody, and that's the answer. And now, once again, that I'm growing, I'm evolving, and I'm learning more, I'm like, especially when it comes to the Black community, I'm like, I think it's a lot more to it than just that. I remember growing up, like, I was talked down to so much, and just beaten down by teachers, by administrations. And so I think we have to not rethink, not reinvent. We have to come up with a brand new system.
Hmm.
And it's an
Hmm.
uphill battle, because as long as those in power like the system the way it is, they're going to fight. And so, um, I don't want to rethink. I don't want to reimagine anything. I want fresh. I want new. I want brand new. And so,
I love that.
yeah,
I just love
yeah,
that because anytime you put "re" in front of something,
right. Yep.
I'm like thinking if it required you to think it again, maybe thinking it in the first place wasn't what you should have done. So why
Yeah.
would you redo it? It's like reheating food that doesn't need to be
Yep.
reheated. Um, very interesting in that you say it should be broader than school choice, because when I think about your story, it was more than just the choice that just having access that drove you to need to make moves. One of the things was being bullied. One of the things was teachers that had low expectations.
Hmm.
Another was just seeing your brother being put on a gifted track and knowing that that was going to be a good opportunity and you wanted it too. What I think is interesting about that is even after you get the school choice scholarship and you move on, there's still a problem with other kids sitting in places where they have teachers with low expectations of them, teachers who tell them things like "you'll never be anything" and
Hmm.
that sort of thing, and bullying. School environments where I don't want my kid. I don't want to put my kid in a school where the dominant culture of the school is one of bullying and one of being afraid throughout your school day. So, okay, we have a scholarship, we get out of the school. Does that mean we stop fighting the fight for massive improvements in the schools you left?
Absolutely not. I think we can. I don't think it's zero sum necessarily. I think we can still, walk and chew gum, so to speak. We can figure out how to improve, especially the public schools.
Hmm.
I think that
Hmm.
I think that's very important. I think it's very important for children to, stay in their communities and build their communities and be a part of their community. It takes a village, right? We are tribal people. We tend to stick together to our tribe. And so, but on the other end, kids are stuck in schools now, and they can't wait. I remember
Hmm.
when we were sitting in the public school before we left. My mom, was a part of this huge meeting, and they rolled out a 5 to 7 year plan, right? And at this point in time, the school will be doing way better, performing way better. And my mom's like, "That's great for the kids, 5 to 7 years from now, but 5 to 7 years, there's no telling where Walter will be."
Hmm.
And so I think in our space, and in the public sector, whether it's the teachers unions or whatever the case may be, we have to stop this zero sum dichotomy A, dichotomy B narrative, right? Like, I hate the argument who's better than Jordan or LeBron, right? LeBron's my favorite, but,
Hmm.
like, we have to, like, there are aspects of both that we can enjoy, we can discuss, we can talk about. And so I think when it comes to the future of our country, the future of our nation and children, like, we have to come to some
Hmm.
common ground. Otherwise, things will stay as they are. And I'm not for
Hmm.
that one bit.
I have kind of a life purpose, and one of it is to invest as much as I can in fixing the problems we're talking about right now, because God could have woken me up on any morning and said, "Your issue that you care about is the environment, or
Right.
police, abuse, or whatever." And I care about all of those issues, but I was awakened to the fact, because of a personal journey, that education, the development of the mind, the development of the intellect, is the first human right. It's the first thing to fight for. So that's just my own story. But I am aging. And I look at people like my mentors, people like Dr. Howard Fuller and others,
Hmm.
who hold so much of the information and the history in them and the strategy, and they have become like the wise sages of this. And I'm in some sort of middle territory where I'm aging into an age where, as my kids get older, and I've got a lot of them, I'm aging that. So you are the next generation. So you mentioned LeBron and Michael Jordan. And this is what I think is important about that. Clearly, it's LeBron, but here, here's my thinking around that is, if I were to say, so you say Michael Jordan, and I were to say to you, Dr. J, right? Like, you would probably look at me like I was crazy, but
Right, right, right.
for their time period, like for their era, they were the top of the game for their era. And there's going to be a new era. The game changes.
Hmm.
It gets
Yes,
faster. It gets
yes.
harder played.
Yep.
There are things that used to fly that won't fly anymore, right? And that's why you
Hmm.
get a Jordan and then a LeBron and others. And you are
Right.
coming up on the generation where I'm out to pasture, and my generation of folks are kind of like looking at you. What do you think is going to change in the way that advocacy happens? Like, I feel like the way that I do it and the way I'm thinking about it is aging, and
Yeah.
and you're coming along, and I'm putting all my investment in Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen A.
Yeah.
So what do you think changes in terms of advocacy?
Well, I think the biggest thing is we're going to see a kind of a innovative push, right? Like as like you said, as the times change, we'll see things change as well. But I see more people supporting it, even if they haven't experienced it themselves. One thing that I've noticed about this particular generation is that, like, when I was out in going past the White House and people are protesting, right? It's not just black people out there protesting. It is like
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
everyone, every single person that you can think of. There were, white people with Black Lives Matter shirts on. There were Asian people. There is so much diversity, and so I think people are finally starting to really to come together, and and other people are taking up other people's causes. And so what I hope to see is people who their kids are fine, right? They wealthy, send them to private school, whatever, school choice doesn't really affect them. That's fine. But they understand the importance of it, not just for them, but for other people. And so I hope to see more empathy, more understanding, more dialogue, even from the people that oppose what we do. I am hoping to see more of that, more openness, more willingness to come to the table. Um, that's what I'm fighting for, and that's what I hope. I one thing, this is down the line, but one thing that I'm planning to do when I run for whatever, it's not if, it's when, but whatever I run for is to focus on that. Right, there is more. Like, I am more interested in what we can do for each other than what you can do for me. And
Mm.
so how can we get together, whether we agree or not, to further advance our people, but then our nation as a whole. And I've been saying this so much, like, with everything that's going on right now, right? You would think, and like I said, maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm not a politician yet, all these things, but
Oh,
it
don't
would
ever
be
become a
it would
politician,
be
Walter.
yeah,
Don't
yeah.
ever become a real politician. Just
Yeah,
be a leader, man. Just be a
right.
leader who gets elected to something. But being a politician is it's hot trash.
Yeah.
Um, but when you do go that direction and you do run for something, you're going to have to declare at that point what your real ideology or your politics, your party, and all that stuff. No, let me take that back. There is no you have to. Like you can run any kind of way you want. So the world's open to you. But do you think it's going to get harder when it's less about an issue that should be shared across all parties, and you get to having to declare, like, a tribe, a
Mhm.
political tribe?
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly will think it's going to be harder, but not impossible. One of
Mhm.
my biggest heroes is Elon Musk, and it was because of his innovation, his ability to change the entire automobile industry. And
Mhm.
now he's sending, rockets up into space. And so maybe it's time to change what we think politics are and
Mhm.
how they
Mhm.
work and how they function. And yeah, like that is I can't even imagine what that looks like or even changing that. But like you said, the next generation is coming, and they are knocking, and they are fired up, and they are passionate. And so I hope, my prayer every single day is that we change the face of this thing, right? We
Mhm.
change, what people see. Like you just said, like, don't become a politician, right? Well, what if 25 years from now, what a politician looks like is completely different than what it has been?
Mhm.
And maybe that's an ambitious goal, and that's a really far off thing, but I am all for radical change, right? I don't if things aren't working, then new things need to be implemented, not you know changing things and doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. I'm not about wasting time. I'm about being productive, and I'm about progress. And so, um, picking a tribe will be difficult, but
And you don't have
but
to
I
do it.
have
That's the other
right,
thing,
right,
like,
yep,
I just said that flippantly, but to be
hmm
honest with you, I expect a lot of it out of your generation, and I expect a lot of your generation to go their own way, to say, like, that's what you all used to do. You used to pick a tribe or whatever, and it's not I don't see it as happening in my lifetime. I've been a third party
hmm
voter before. I've been a third party campaign person before. So I obviously have some belief in it, but your generation might be the type that does it very different. But let me just say what scares me a lot. What scares me a lot is we care very deeply about education and about the giving of opportunities to kids. You just
hmm
mentioned Elon Musk. I know that there is a black Elon Musk somewhere that is being misshaped by the
right,
system that they're in right now. And we'll
right,
never know them to be
yep,
the black Elon Musk because
hmm
of the system we put them through, which diminishes the mind. But I
right,
never ever see people burning buildings down and having massive sit-ins and challenging the police and whatever the way that they should be with education. I never see that level of energy
right,
for something so important like how America educates its children and how much human capital we're losing by keeping kids trapped in circumstances that are beneath them, you know.
yeah,
So I'm glad that you mentioned that people like Elon Musk are your folks, but I'm hoping you're thinking that this is really hard because Elon Musk is putting a rocket into space, right, from a private company, but business and everybody else and unions and no one has been able to do the same thing for public
hmm
education,
right,
which is really daunting. Like we can put a
hmm
put a man on the moon, but we can't get a kid in Columbus to read, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What's
And
gonna be
so and
different with you,
so
man? How you gonna change that? It's all on you right now. How you gonna change
Yeah, right, right. Well, the biggest thing is listening to the Lord and being led. Honestly, that's
that?
that's how I plan to, honestly, because like you said, it has been this long, and nothing has changed. And so, me personally, uh, that is a huge challenge and a huge motivator for me. Right, like you just saying that, like, makes me want to get started on figuring out how to do this, right away. Um,
Mhm.
and so I think the best way to do it is for me personally, the things I'm doing now, right? Learning as much as I can, understanding as much as I can, knowledge, and then the method or whatever, I believe will come, right?
Mhm.
Whatever it looks like.
Mhm.
But I have to make sure that I'm prepared for that whenever that happens. I could be at home tonight and an idea pop into my head, and whatever the case may be. But I think understanding how the game is played to the fullest, you can kind of cheat a little bit. We see, like, in basketball, right? You're not
Mhm.
supposed to hand check, right? So Kobe used to pin his defender's arm behind his back when he would dribble, so he couldn't cross over. And if he did, he would steal it, right? Like, finding those little nuances and being creative and innovative, to win. I'll do whatever it takes to push this agenda and to push the progress of my people. And so, like you said, right now I don't know what that looks like, but I'm doing everything that I can now. I'm learning, taking cues from people like you, from Dr. Fuller, to really try to make change in the future. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm obviously not promising anything now, but a lot of
You
people in my
should.
circle
You
are
should. You're
saying,
promising. You're a
yeah,
promising
yeah.
person. You should promise some things.
A lot of people in my circle are saying, it's never too early to start, campaigning or to start, thinking
Mhm.
about these things. And so, one thing that I can guarantee is that, I'll never stop, right? I'll never stop trying. I'll never stop figuring out ways to, very basic, give families more opportunity, right? That's it in this particular space. And so, there's a lot of work to be done, as there has been, but I am hopeful for this generation and the next generation to really step up and lead well and lead effectively. And so, we'll see. We'll see. I'm expecting huge strides. I really am.
I mean, that's an amazing thing to say because I'm not. uh, so again, I look to you and your generation for inspiration, for hope, for a fresh look at things. There's a way to age into this where you just start feeling so cynical.
Yeah.
Like you've seen it all. You've seen behind the scenes how people fight, not on behalf of kids, but really fight on behalf of institutions and people that are not doing right by kids. So after a while, you become cynical about that. Is there anything about that you're seeing as you're in these rooms that, as hopeful as you are, concerns you about the stuff that that people in public don't see? Not everybody knows what goes on in
Right.
rooms of power.
Yeah.
Is there anything that
Yeah.
concerns you?
I mean, I think it's just the thing that concerns most people is the party politics. I mean, for me, that is the most concerning. Like I
Mhm.
was on Capitol Hill speaking with members of Congress about various school choice bills in their state, federal level, whatever the case may be. And when we would meet with some Democrat leaders, the first question that they would ask is, have any other Democrats signed on to this? Or do any other Democrats support this? Like in my mind, like I said, once again, maybe it's because I'm young and naive, but it's just like, why does that matter? Right? This is the right thing to support. It doesn't matter who else supports it, right? You stand on this hill if it's right, and then you let everybody else come up if they want, but your view shouldn't change. And so, um, and then also, of course, there's also special interest groups who have way more money than we do, way more spending power and spending influence than we do. But um, you know, that's what Goliath was, right? And David went up with the one of the most
Basic
um,
weapons.
basic, yeah,
Mhm.
thank you, basic weapons, and took them out. And so, that's my inspiration. I keep kids at the forefront of it and focus on uniting. And I think there's the old African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you
Mhm.
want to go farther, go together. And so I think unity is what will really get this. And we've been hearing this all the time, right? Together, one, all of these things. But I think we can really get people to buy in. I think that will help push us further. But like you said, you're cynical. You've seen some things. I have too, and there are days I'm just like, is this even worth it? But at the end, if one kid has the opportunity in life to really take it further, then it's all worth it. And so
I
hopefully
think
it's
you're
more
proof
than
of
that,
that.
obviously. Yeah,
No, I
yeah,
think you're really proof of that. I think your story, we called this at the outset, we called this the choice that changed their life. And I think
yeah,
you getting out of schools of low expectations and getting into schools, of high success, um, definitely made a change, made a difference in one person's life who now you can go on and make a difference in a lot of others. So that is the ultimate pay it forward story. It doesn't take a million things to happen at once, like a million kids to get the same opportunity at once. It just requires some so that they can fight for the others. I have a question for you around though. Going back a little bit to we talked about the ethnic tax of sending black kids into white private schools, which first of all, anybody listening or watching, that is not the school choice template. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be about getting any type of kid into one kind of school. Like getting all the black kids into white private schools is not a plan. Matter of fact, there might be something called black private schools, black independent schools of high quality, right? That would be more available if we had programs like school choice programs that allowed them to exist, in bigger numbers. But I wonder, we talk about the benefit for black kids and kids of color and underprivileged kids going into those environments. But do you think for your 6 white friends, I think you said 6, five white friends and a black friend, but for your white friends that you made through this interaction, do you think it wasn't just about you becoming better, but do you think they're better off for having known you and having had the interaction with you and having
Oh my goodness.
you as a friend?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And so even during all of this, I mean, we've talked. I mean, we all met my one black friend I've been close to since middle school, and the other guys I met all in college, freshman year of college, and we've all sat down, had very deep conversations where we talk about some of these hard things, race and all this other stuff. And my black friend and I will, like, we would really be transparent and show a lot of the scars that we have, being black in America. And one thing that they always say is that their whole perspective has changed around what how a black person acts, or what their life looks like. Like one of them last week said to me, like, I used to think that if black people just behaved right with police or with other people, they wouldn't get in trouble so much. And I'm like, I am glad that you did not tell me that when we were first friends, because we most likely would not be friends right now. And so I think giving that other perspective, obviously with grace and being tactful about it, changes their perspective. And now they go off to their white families or other white friends, and they have the perspective of a black person with them. And so then it spreads and then it multiplies. And so yeah, it has been just as beneficial for me as it has been for them. And I think iron sharpens iron, and that's what true friendship is. And if I ever get married, then those are going to be the guys that are there with me, and it doesn't have anything to do with I chose them because they were white or anything like that. But just like we all vibe together, like, right? They listen to J. Cole, they listen to Drake, and they some of the things that. One of them has been listening to NWA longer than I have. I mean, that obviously doesn't make you black, but
no.
But when you have those shared experiences, right? I think it makes it easier to have those conversations and have those walls down. And so yeah, it's been very beneficial.
So Michelle Johnson, who's watching this, says she wants to introduce you to her daughter.
Uh-oh.
Oh, that's a whole different show. We have become a dating program now. It's been interesting comments, because I feel like you occupy a rare space, Walter. Like, so you are occupying very rare air in that you are a shining example of what a policy can do, a policy that oftentimes is very political, and some people who would be cheering you right now are not necessarily always people that will be cheering school choice. So it's interesting to have you in the world, because you're a product of the thing that, like, you're a proof of concept in some ways, in most ways. And I've been, what's really interesting to me is watching how you didn't just go full hog and become one thing, right? Like, you didn't just people worried about you selling your soul. It's good that you have it. It's good that you have perspective and some balance and some even-handedness, because in most ways, I think that's more dangerous.
Yeah.
I think it's more dangerous to the system for you to exist as this even person, this even-headed person who can see different sides, than you just going like full out and becoming some robot,
right?
To the system or to the cause. But I'm watching as the comments go, and people have stories. They have stories about themselves, about like low expectation in schools, about school, needing to leave their community and travel to go and find a good school, So you're striking on something that I think is common to a lot of people in the United States. We just don't know what to do about it yet. So I'm really happy, excited to always be in touch with you. Should remind people that the first time I met you was, I believe, at Excel and Ed, which is
2017.
Was it 2017? So yeah, wow,
Yep.
it's been 3 years now. And you were on a panel, and I thought to myself, this is a parent's dream right here. This is the kid that you want. Like, when you raise the kid, like I love all my kids, and I believe that. Like my kids are awesome. They're amazing. But watching what you're doing and what you've come into, I saw it at the moment I met you, the panel that we were on. I looked over, and it's funny to hear you now say that you could run for office one day, because I said that the first time I met you. Like when we got off the stage, I said, yeah, this is a kid that totally could be president one day, if he wanted to be. So big ups to you, big ups to your parents. I hope things in Ohio go much better for the kids of Ohio, because Ohio, like most of America, has a very mixed educational situation that is
Mhm.
leaving way too many kids behind. I'm sure you have left people in your communities that still need a way out,
Yeah.
like you got. What's your final word for the people, in terms of after they leave the show, after they've seen it and they watch it, that you would hope that they understand about school choice?
Just the biggest thing for me is just continue to be inspired. I always say that school choice has the ability to break the cycle of poverty within one generation. And I firmly believe that. And so continue to be inspired, continue to look for ways to get involved, because it really does take a village. It takes a village to raise a child, and it takes a village to change policy so that child can go to a better school. And so continue to fight, continue to stay engaged, and let your voice be heard.
Walter, I totally appreciate you coming on today. You're an amazing dude. This has been one of my favorite shows, like, because I want to speak to more people that are coming up in the hopeful generation, the ones I'm placing my hope in. If you've been watching this or listening to this, Walter's Twitter handle has been going across the bottom, and it's at chosen114, and chosen is CHOZEN, and then one, the word 10, or ONE, and then the letters 14. Man, you got to do better with the branding, bro. You got
Yeah, I
to.
know, I know, I know. I've had it since
Oh,
since I was in middle school, but
dang, really?
it's
You've
from
had a
oh
Twitter
yeah,
handle since then?
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my
Well,
god.
Not Twitter, but I had it on Facebook for a while too. But it's from
Gotcha.
First Peter, chapter 3, where it talks about a holy generation, a chosen generation, a holy priesthood. So um, I'm not the chosen one. I'm a chosen one,
A
is what
chosen
I
one.
always say. Yep, yep.
Well, how fitting and appropriate. So if you want to get in touch with Walter, that's one way to do it. You could also look him up on Facebook. He also is in a communications associate with AFC, the American Federation of Teachers. So if you Google them, you'll find him on their website also. And I suggest, as much as you can, seek out this young man, talk to him, and have him talk to your people, because I can't think of anybody that gives me more hope than Walter. So thanks, man. I
Wow, I
appreciate you.
appreciate that. Yeah, thank you so much.